Arteta! What a strike! What a screamer! Zola! And a fantastic goal! Arsenal back in it! And here's Limpar, lines it up, finds the net. Arsenal in front.
No tension in the second leg as Arsenal's scintillating away form and unpenetrable defense proved too much for Napoli in Italy. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter at Yankee Gunner. Yeah, that's right. The combination of our away form and our impenetrable defense really proved to be too much for Napoli. I think I pretty much just said that. So there you go. But yeah, those are jokes, but they're kind of not jokes because that's what? 3 clean sheets on the bounce, as they say, in a row, as we say here, consecutively, as is said everywhere that speaks English. So yeah, it's all good things. Direction of travel is good. And we move on to the semifinal of a tournament that really only feels like it starts in the semifinal, as bizarre as that sounds. Ironically, dispatching Italian opposition for the second consecutive season to reach the semifinal. So that's interesting. Other fun tidbits like this as I think of them. The FBAs, the Football Blogging Awards, are going to hand out awards. I recommend voting for Arsblog as Best Content Creator, but pointedly not as Best Podcast, because content creator, great, he can win that. We could win Best Podcast. Wouldn't that be cool? There is a Sunderland podcast that's actually doing quite well, I am told, which we can't have that. This is Arsenal. We win everything that has anything to do with an online poll. So you can go to our podcast. You're there right now. And from there, you can go to our website and vote, or you can just tweet out your vote or whatever, but there's like 2 days left to vote. So we love you and we appreciate you, and we would love your vote, or that you vote for someone you think is more deserving. But then that would break our hearts, all of our hearts collectively. How many hearts are here? All the hearts. All the hearts are here. Paul's here. You can find him on Twitter at Pausing in My Pants. Hello, Paz.
Woohoo.
Woohoo indeed. Tim is here. You can find him on Twitter at Stilberto. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
And the man who slacks, the man who does not join the podcast is back. Clive. You can find him on Twitter at Clive PAFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
Took a holiday from the last one, did you?
Just working. Back a little bit late, and you lot went without being brought in some bloke called Andrew.
Can't be having that, son.
Did quite well, didn't
Not
he?
for me, Clive. Yeah, I think that worked out just fine. But yes, we are pleased to have you back. You are particularly popular on YouTube. We published this to YouTube, and the comments on YouTube were mostly, "What is this shit? Where is Clive?" So tells us all where we stand. I assume your family is a big YouTube using family then.
Every one of them. Every one of them.
Yeah, good stuff. Hey, mailbag next week on Patreon if you want to do the Patreon thing. And don't forget the Discord server. There's a lot of really awesome chat going on there, and cool articles are shared, and lots of interesting statistics. And then sometimes I pop up with a shit opinion that I haven't already put on Twitter. So all good things. In any event, let's dive in. Kind of nothing match, boys. I mean, we did this one easy style. Kind of devoid of the things that make podcasts interesting, other than a really nice Lacazette set piece goal. But I guess we can start with you, Clive, and your thoughts on how we lined up. I mean, I felt very, very strongly that he would go with both strikers, and as usual, I was proven correct. So, kudos to me. But, I thought this was kind of the perfect balance from Emery, in that there was enough defensive solidity to not be wide open, but, enough attacking intent in the side to recognize that an away goal would put the tie away, which it did. So do you feel he struck the perfect balance?
Yeah, I think so. I think the team was in the post, wasn't it, from the previous game, the way he looked after the wing backs, etc. So we knew he was going to go in with back three. The back three that played is our best back three. The 2 wing backs that we had are our best 2 wing backs currently fit and available. That centre midfield 3, that's probably our most trustworthy 3. We have the ability, we have the running power, we have the passing ability, and we have the presser, the sprinter, the disruptor. And then we have our 2 forwards on the pitch. Right? So apart from maybe the goalkeeper, that's probably the strongest team Arsenal can put out right now. And if you're playing a team for your life,
by the way,
that would be it.
Mesut Ozil fans can direct their hatred towards Clive on Twitter at Clive PAFC.
Yeah, just from a manager's point of view, I'm thinking if I've got, I'm going out for a big game, and there are some players that I can trust, and there are other players with equal, if not more, ability, but you have to pick a team you can trust. And over 2 or 3 of those players, let's just call them out, right? Ozil, Mkhitaryan, and Iwobi, hugely talented players. You ask yourself a question, can I trust them? Not sure. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll save them for a home game. I need all their freshness. Crystal Palace at home, and I'm going to play a team away in Italy that I can trust. Give me the work rate, the pressing, the energy, the drive, the consistency, 7 out of 10 that I know I'm going to get. And that's what he did. And most of us weren't too far away from that side beforehand. And the balance was perfect, and it was really enjoyable.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is nice to be able to get through without making this a stressful occasion, and we were able to do that. I mean, obviously Lacazette's goal was the highlight of the match, but Tim, I want to focus on a player that maybe wouldn't have been the first one people would expect to talk about, but I think he deserves attention. And in a game where very little real incident happened, I thought Ainsley Maitland-Niles was really strong again. And, you know, we struggled so much this season after Bellerin went out trying to find a solution there. Jenkinson got to play. Mustafi has played it right back. Lichtsteiner, the less said about him, the better. His acquisition really bested only by Denis Suarez for disaster player move of the season. So, I mean, I think, well, I know you don't agree with that comment, by the way, but it is what it is. But I think that Maitland-Niles went through a kind of rough period, but has really come out the other side of it showing his quality. And I thought he was really solid and good in this game again. How important is his really ascendancy to the first choice at that position, and someone who looks like he can be a first choice for that position for how we've done this season and how we will do this season?
Yeah, I think so. I think... And I think, you know, we should still be a little bit cautious. We go game to game. You know, a week and a half ago, was it just under 2 weeks ago, he had a real stinker at Everton.
True,
but,
fair, yes.
I think in general, he has been really good lately, and he came on at Watford and made that excellent block, which was a really excellent, intelligent piece of defending, actually. And that's you know, considering he hasn't made his trade really as a defender to this point, the way that he kind of, when he put that block in, he didn't just throw himself, like he threw himself towards the player and the ball to really cut the space down. I thought it was a really intelligent, almost wily experienced piece of defending. And
it was Gibbsian.
Yeah, well,
no.
I'm not.
What? No.
I know what Paul's referring to as the West Brom block.
Yeah.
That got us Champions League. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. I'm not sure Gibbs did that on a regular basis, but anyway, let's not relitigate the past too much.
We'll save that for Patreon. If that doesn't drive people to sign up, I don't know what does. In the spotlight, Kieran Gibbs. There you go.
But yeah, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, I think what we're seeing is he's just getting used to the position, which I kind of always thought he would. Fullback's one of those positions as well where, you know, it's very much about, you know, your body shape, which way to point your shoulders, covering space. You know, it's a narrow strip of the pitch, and a lot of it is just to do with like your stance a lot of the time. And I think that takes a little bit of getting used to, and he seems to have really gotten used to that. And I think what he's discovering as well is he's got quite a lot of attributes, Maitland-Niles. He is strong. You know, he doesn't excel at anything. Like, he's strong, but you wouldn't say he's super strong. He's quick without being super quick. He's composed and good on the ball without being, you know, he's got a lot of 7 out of 10 attributes. But I think what he's really discovering over the, you know, having had a run in this position is which of his attributes are good for this position. And one of the things I've really liked in recent weeks, I think he's got the knack of driving towards the byline off the ball. And we're seeing him hit that kind of half space in behind the fullbacks. But what I've really liked is the way he carries the ball now, the way he kind of leans into opponents and keeps them away from the ball. I think he's very, very good at that. He's very good at just getting his shoulder into the chest of the opponent and just easing them away from the ball and protecting the ball. And you know, without being like a super mazy dribbler, he's become a lot better at holding on to it going forward, which particularly in a game like this where you need that outlet, where we knew that we probably didn't come under as much pressure as we thought we would, but you kind of think, yeah, we need particularly without Iwobi, we need a bit of a ball carrier, someone who can, you know, get the ball up the pitch 30-40 yards and give us a bit of a break. And he's really showing a bit of a penchant for that. So and yeah, I think it is very important because Lichtsteiner is, you know, he's clearly just not going to play again for Arsenal, and that's a decision that looks like it was made several months ago now. And, you know, because you look at the alternatives behind him and it's Mustafi, and that's scary. And when you look at in the context of the summer and the amount we've got to do and the money we've got to do it with, if we can hold off buying, a backup right back for another year or two, that would be very beneficial for us. So if Maitland-Niles can just convince that, I can deputise for Bellerin until he gets fit, and then we can share the position. And again, at this moment in time, he doesn't have to be Cafu to be able to do that. It'd be nice if he got to that level eventually, but he doesn't have to do that right now. He just has to be good. And he's been really good the last couple of weeks, and time will tell us if he can do that consistently. But I've been really enthused with what I've seen insofar as I don't. I'm not saying I ever shuddered, but I don't worry when I see him on the team sheet. He's become, quite an established part of the team now.
And look,
it seems like he's warmed to the position just recently, doesn't it? I mean, he actually looks like he's enjoying it. He might have had a good performance from time to time in the past, but he didn't look like he thought he should be there. He wanted to be there. Now it seems the penny's dropping for him that, hey, we've got 0 positions for you in midfield, but we've got a position that's at wing back that we'd like to pay you 80 or 90,000 a year if you're a week on. If you're actually really good at it, and he just seems to have settled into it.
He looks like a wing back rather than a midfielder playing wing back at the moment.
Yeah, and I think, look, maybe some of this is because we're playing a back three now, the position suits him more, and, fullback is not really his position. I do think he's a reasonable stand-up tackler, actually. If there's anything that I think he needs to get out of his game defensively, it's that he sometimes goes to sleep off the ball, and he's vulnerable to runs in behind. Which we've seen occasionally. The thing that's interesting, though, and, Paul, I wonder if maybe this is something that even someone's had a little word in his ear about. There is no future for him at that position in the immediate term because it is Bellerin's position. Now, look, Bellerin may not be back at the beginning of next season. He may not be back to the level he needs to be. And we know with these kinds of injuries that little muscular pulls and tears and niggles pop up afterwards. And so it may be a stop-start season for Bellerin next season. And so Maitland-Niles may play a lot there. But I look at another position, and that's Aaron Ramsey, who is, I don't know if you've heard this, leaving this summer. And you look at the midfield, and it's Torreira, and it's Guendouzi, and it's Xhaka, and that's really it. And I wonder if maybe Emery's even had a little word in Maitland-Niles' ear and saying, look, you're going to play 20, 25 games for the first team this season at a position that has you going, both ways, up and down the pitch. There may be opportunities for you next year in midfield with Ramsey leaving. And, do you think it's possible that Maitland-Niles next season is a combination of, deputizing for Bellerin when he's in and out of the squad, but also being part of the solution for Ramsey's departure?
No.
Okay. So moving on.
I think that may be what pans
he is a
out.
midfielder, right? That's what he was and thinks of himself as, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I think that's in some ways been his problem. He's a young fella with his own ideas, and I think he's kind of been brought up on the idea he would be a midfielder. But he's got, as he's displaying, he's got the attributes to be a hell of a wing-back, full-back. And I mean, one of the most interesting positions in the game these days is a wing-back. You get basically to do everything. And in certain lineups, you get to cut into midfield and dribble through the middle or move in and take the ball. There are all sorts of things your current wing back does that a full back of old never did. I'm reminded.
Well, yeah. I mean, could how hard do you think it would be for him to slide over to the left then? If people think Koscielny is not the level that we need, can he be better than Koscielny on the left?
Well, I think interestingly, he had better performances at left back than he did for us early on in this run at right back, and then I guess there was before and after the injury. But he kind of struggled at right back when played there. But I don't think I think he can be a much better right back and very much more of a third string left back. That's not really going to play to his strength. And the reason I kind of went with the aggressive no on the thought is not so much that it might not play out that way. He may well get a shot in midfield, and that may well be his position at some stage in the future. But I think the important thing for Emery to do was to settle Maitland-Niles down and give him the speech that says, hey, we actually have a position open here at wing back that can get you paid, 60, 70, 80,000 a week, and you have a hell of a career in the Premier League. And at the moment, I don't have a midfield position for you. It's still a possibility for you in the future, but I think the key job of Emery is to get Maitland-Niles to really grow into this role, really enjoy it, really start to think of himself as a wing-back. And I think that it's better to do that by not saying, hey, do this for a bit, but I got a midfield job for you in the future. I think he really needed to wean himself off the idea of being a midfielder, at least in the short to medium terms.
Yeah, maybe. I don't hate that interpretation. I do think, and this gets tedious fast, I think that Arsenal Football Club is not the size from a revenue standpoint that we should be paying our backup fullback stroke wingbacks 80,000 a week. I mean, maybe I'm out of my mind there. I think for him to earn that kind of wage, he's going to have to be a regular first team player to position. And next season it's unclear where that position will be. I do think that
let's not get hung up on whether he's paid 60 or 70 or 80, but he's not paid.
That's why I said it's tedious. We don't have to litigate that.
What do we think he's paid at the moment? Probably not a lot.
35.
Yeah. So, how would you like to get paid Premier League money for? 67. I mean, if he's good enough, he'll get there in 2 or 3 years.
Totally.
At his age, he sees a lot of upside. What's Bellerin paid? He's going to be rubbing his hands saying, I can do that.
Yeah, no, I think that's all fair. And ultimately, I guess the reason I ask about midfield is if we think El Nenny's going and we know that Ramsey's going and we know that we're probably going to be shopping for a wide player this summer and we know we're probably shopping for a center back and we know we may be looking for a left back. I mean, at some point, we may even have to buy a backup goalkeeper. At some point, you say there's not going to be enough money to address every position, and Maitland-Niles at least has a shout for being there. Clive, I know you probably do not want to get shut out of this conversation, but 16 minutes on Maitland-Niles feels more than I had intended. So how about just a real quick coda on the Maitland-Niles conversation and we move on?
He's a nice player. I think what he's done recently is he's made himself busy. I think he's a little bit lackadaisical sometimes, and now he's just busier to get more touches on the ball. He's a very smooth player. The way he receives the ball is beautiful. So when you see him have lots of touches, he normally has a good game. It's when he does not get himself involved in the game, he can lack concentration. So the more touches, the better. And I think he's just looking smoother and less nervous. Would that make sense? I think he's quite a nervous kid. I said before, I think he's 21 going on 19. He's not one of those kids that are sort of up ahead of themselves emotionally. And I think he is a young player still, younger than his years. But I think he's growing up fast. And the role suits him. Listened to an interview with him. He said, I think I'm a right winger. So right wing back suits him. Rather than Gibbs, I see him more of as a Lauren, if that makes sense, and more of an underlapper, and to Ashley Cole's overlapper and drive through lines. I love the way he plays. He drives, he underlaps, he sets Lacazette in that right-hand channel, and he supports on the second phase. So he's not a corner flag wing-back, if that makes sense. He drives in with, which means he really is a wide midfielder that can get back and defend. And I think he's a great squad player to have. Things for you, and for me, his future's bright. We've got to stay patient with him.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think that's plenty on Maitland-Niles. I wanted to focus on him because we have a game where there weren't a lot of incidents, and I don't think we've talked about him a lot. So I think that it's good to draw attention to these players when we have a moment, because it is a position that was a major, major problem for us, and he has played well enough. Look, I don't think he's been perfect, but he has definitely played well enough to allay concerns about that position as a reason we can't go on and achieve whatever we want and need to achieve this season. Clive, let me stay with you for 1 second, though. This tie felt, in the end, very easy. And I think that we can wind up coming away from it feeling very good about ourselves. But when you look at the first leg against Napoli and the Everton game and the Watford game and the second leg against Napoli, and you really think about it, I think there are just a few warning signs, and I want to get your thoughts on the fact that they did have 20 shots in this game. They did have big chances in the first leg that they squandered. They squandered some gilt-edged chances in this game too. And look, that's football. You play well, you still ride your luck at times. I mean, there was a Champions League game in midweek that I don't really remember, and I'm not sure what the outcome was, and I don't think it really matters. But if memory serves, it's a reminder that, there are very, very fine margins between feeling really good about a performance and being eliminated from a tournament. So I'm not trying to split hairs too much, but do you think there are some warning signs in this game and in this tie generally with some of the chances that we gave up? And is it possible that we should just be mindful of how open we were at times? I mean, they did take 20 shots in this game. They did have a couple of big chances. Do you have any worry that maybe
to your point, Elliot, they had 10 touch and go offsides.
Yeah.
Even if they were offside, I mean, you just need a bad decision. And I mean, they had the ball in the net twice. They had that wide open header. So
yeah, and I know this will be framed as, oh, there goes Elliot, pissing in everyone's Cheerios again, or whatever the expression is. But I don't mean it that way. I just mean, do you have any cause for concern as you look at the way we defended and say that there are just some warning signs in this tie with the number of shots they had and the chances that they squandered?
Not at all, really, to be honest, Elliot. I think.
Good. Well, that makes me feel much better.
I think before the goal, we were quite sharp and we weren't in charge. We were competitive, and then we got the goal. Once you get the goal, the game becomes you've got to score 4. You know what we're going to do? We're going to stay tight here, and if you want to have a shot, have one. I'm not going to try to deflect it into my net. I'm going to keep you far enough away from my goal where you can have a shot from there if you want. That's a stupid angle. Don't want to take it. Shoot, I want a rest. And it's like that, really. I think the one Milik header, I think when Koscielny got caught in, was probably one that, could have gone the other way. But they were so rubbish. He had a square head, he put it past near the corner flag. So I just felt the story of the game made our defenders just be conservative, just make sure that we didn't give up big chances, too many. And if they got one, I think we could have gone again. I was disappointed in them, actually. I thought in the home game, I thought there were some bright moments after half time, and I was a bit concerned. I even thought potentially we might go back 4 after what happened to Monreal. But when you saw the reflection from the game before, you thought, okay, back 3. But the trick was to really press them up high with 2 forwards, and we did that. And they could not get out with the same quality. They couldn't match us physically. And I just felt the players just jabbed at them. Elliot just jabbed them, kept them at arm's length, had a couple of shots and said, yeah, go on then. Let me just pull out my socks. You do that. I'm going to go down, have a rest, and just slow the game down, break up. It was really, really, really professional. And it's amazing what a goal does at the right time, especially away from home. It just changes everything. And they were deflated. The crowd went quiet. And, we just played it out. So sometimes there were things that annoyed me in the previous game more than this game. About our defending in the Watford game, about our slackness in the last third, about choosing the wrong foot for clearances, and that game worried me a lot more than this game, even though the numbers may not look as damning. But this game, I felt comfortable from the moment we scored, and I just felt we were doing what we needed to do to get the result, to get out of there with the least energy expended. Looking forward to Crystal Palace.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, this did feel comfortable, as certainly as comfortable as any of these things do feel. I think that there were some warning signs. In the first leg, the gap between Nacho and Koscielny, I think, was exploited a bit. I thought in this game, they were able to get in. As Paul rightly pointed out, I think they were playing off the last shoulder a lot, and there were times where it was really close between them getting in and not getting in. But overall, I thought we managed the game pretty well. I think that, Tim, the problem here, obviously, is that any discussion of this game is going to inevitably focus on the Ramsey injury, and rightfully so. I think it's fair to say that our resurgence since Valentine's Day, roughly, since the Bate Borisov loss, has been largely due to Ramsey's involvement. Certainly Ramsey and Ozil together, but Ramsey's involvement has been a big part of it at both ends of the pitch, and certainly his ability to partner with whomever Emery wants to partner him with in midfield. While I don't think he was exceptional in this game while he was on, he has been the driving force of our resurgence, and now it looks like we may miss him for the rest of the season. I mean, I guess theoretically you could get him back for, maybe the Europa League final if we're in it, but it is a worry. I mean, how concerned are you about us coping with him in his absence, without him while he's gone?
Yeah, I am a bit concerned about that, I have to say. I think the thing is with Ramsey in recent weeks is he kind of goes a long way to answering the kind of conundrum that Emery has been grappling with all season between balancing this team between defence and attack. And, this kind of, do I have 3 central midfielders and sacrifice an attacker, at the expense of a 4th attacker, or do I have 2 central midfielders and 4 attackers? Because Ramsey can bridge that gap, particularly with a back 3 behind him. And he really pushed on while he was on in this game, which I think shows you a lot. I was really curious as to how it would pan out because, with Lacazette and Aubameyang on, it was a bit like, are we just going to leave it to those two to play on the counter? Like, how much is Ramsey going to join them? But he was right up there with them. And it was a lot like that Spurs second half where Lacazette and Aubameyang played the split striker role and they just had Ramsey kind of completing the V and just like bringing up the rear a little bit. I do worry about it. I do think in recent weeks our 2 most important players have been Koscielny and Ramsey for completely different reasons. I don't think that Ramsey's like totally irreplaceable or anything like that. We've played without him a lot this season, and I mean, what this kind of shows you, if you're looking to feel better about his departure, is that even when his minutes have been managed, he's still struggling. He's had this like muscle issue since the international break. He hasn't been able to get rid of it. We've tried to manage his minutes. Mm-hmm. The fact that we keep starting him shows you
our dependence on him.
Important, yeah, exactly. Shows you how the manager regards him at the moment. And I do worry with like away games at Wolves and Leicester. Like Palace, I don't think he'd have played anyway. I'm sure he was earmarked to sit that one out on the bench. But yeah, particularly with the away games coming up, because I just think it might see Emery lean back into that caution again, or else leave Lacazette and Aubameyang up front as a bit of an island again. But what it is as the manager said, it's a great opportunity for other players. Mkhitaryan came on. Can he play that role? Ozil, that's not a bad option to have, really. It feels kind of ridiculous talking about Mesut Ozil like he's some kind of like guy from the under-23s that might get a chance now.
Utility midfielder to plug in an emergency.
Yeah, like he's some kind of slightly more attacking El Neni. Like it's a fabulous opportunity for him. And again, I'm sure he'd have played against Palace anyway. And actually, where we are, because it's going to be Ozil, I'm sure, who's going to be asked to kind of pick up the baton, and he's had minutes managed and stuff like that. But I think the kind of thing for Ozil, A, it's a kind of go on then, go and prove yourself, and B, the rift between him and Emery has kind of, I think, been mended, at least temporarily, in recent weeks. So it's not like we're bringing in super moody, pissed off Ozil. He's been involved. It's not like he's not been involved and we've had to go to him with the begging bowl. He's been involved. He knows how we're playing. He's playing plenty. So, he's not going to do the same job that Ramsey's been doing, but that's not to say that he can't do what he normally does and make us very, very useful and kind of knit this team together. I do tend to think as well, because Xhaka apparently is a doubt for Sunday against Palace. I think that Ozil was a bit more important when Xhaka's not there, just for that bit of technical control.
Yeah, totally agree.
So if Xhaka is going to sit out the next couple of games, then I think having Ozil makes sense anyway. We've got Mkhitaryan, we've got Iwobi, and we've even got Denis Suarez. Remember him. So there are players there, and they're all really good players. I do wonder if they can give us what Ramsey's given us, and what worries me at this stage is we're kind of going to have to change the way we've been playing. And the way we've been playing, we've kind of settled into a groove recently, and this kind of makes the needle jump a little bit. But that was going to be inevitable. That was going to happen, particularly when you're still quite dependent on players who are quite brittle like Ramsey and Koscielny. It was always unlikely that both of them were going to be able to play every game.
Do you have any criticism for Emery using Ramsey in this game, given that, the one thing you know about him is anytime he plays 2 games in a week, you run the risk of a muscle injury, and with a 2-0 lead after the first leg, he maybe could have erred on the side of caution a little bit?
Maybe. I wasn't complaining before the game. And look, ultimately, they're footballers. And we know they're not machines or anything, but they're footballers. Their job is to play football. And you have to be able to trust them. And it's like this run-in. There are going to be players, because we haven't got 100 players, there are going to be guys who are going to have to play pretty much every game between now and the end of the season. And, the manager's spoken about rotation and everything like that. And yes, we're going to have to do that, but we can't do that with everyone. And at some point, footballers have to play football, and they're going to have to play maybe a bit too much football sometimes, but they're just going to have to get through it. And unfortunately, Ramsey can't really get through it, and that maybe goes some way to making the separation from him a little bit easier, because it's becoming more and more difficult as he's getting more important. And actually, maybe in the long term, maybe it's a good thing to start weaning off now. Yeah. And coming up with something different, or integrating Ozil fully, because we don't know what his future is, but there's more chance he's going to be with us next season than Ramsey, that's for sure. So maybe that's not a bad thing, but I do worry a bit, because I do think at this stage of the season you want settled lineups as far as possible, settled styles, and I do think that losing Ramsey changes something a little bit, and we're going to have to hope it's not too disruptive.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, Guendouzi has kind of fallen out of favor a little bit. I don't think out of favor in the sense that the manager has a problem with him, but in the sense that he hasn't been used as much. This certainly brings him back into the reckoning for a lot of potential playing time. And I think he has the skill and the quality to do it, but I take your point. If anybody now is in line to play every game, in my opinion, it's Mesut Ozil. I think we've had at least one of them on the pitch at all times during this run of good results, and I think that's going to continue now with Ozil coming in and playing all the games. Would be great if Ramsey could get back on the pitch for us before leaving for Juventus and doing it in Baku to help win another cup final for us. That would be a nice way to cement his legacy. Paul, Tim and Clive live outside the United States, so they've already celebrated their Mother's Day, but you and I have Mother's Day coming up here in the United States. You picked out any gifts for your missus or your mom yet?
I buy them those sexy underwear.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. We can get you sorted out for Mother's Day with a gift from the Enclosed Lingerie. So we'll take a break. Yeah. We'll sell you some lingerie for Mother's Day if you're in the U.S. If you're not in the U.S., we'll sell you some lingerie just because it's spring and it's time to start thinking about wearing skimpier outfits. So we'll take a break. We're going to talk about Lacazette and then look forward to the games coming up. After this, stay with us. Okay, everyone, it's time to tell you about our friends at Enclosed Lingerie. You can find them online at The Enclosed, ENCLOSED.com. Enclosed Lingerie is a Lingerie of the Month club. That's right, just like a Beer of the Month club, only better, because it's a high-end luxury lingerie gift for you and your partner that's going to enhance the intimacy in your relationship. Right now, if you put in Arsenal at checkout, they're going to give you $35 off any gift from Enclosed Lingerie. So you're going to want to go to theenclosed.com and sign up now. What better way to celebrate the romance in your relationship than celebrating with a gift from The Enclosed? And the gifts keep coming every month. So while it can be difficult to remember to keep the romance, to keep the intimacy in your relationship, The Enclosed has your back. Every month you're going to get that high-end luxury lingerie gift, and it's going to remind you of the importance of romance in your relationship. So do it now. Go to theenclosed.com. There is a perfect fit guarantee, so you never have to worry about the fit. It's beautiful high-end luxury lingerie. Just go to theenclosed.com and enter promo code ARSENAL for $35 off at checkout. Do it now. Okay, we're back, and awkward segue aside, I think we are ready to go. Paul, you have any thoughts on the Enclosed advertisement that we just heard?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if a number of our players might be wearing our Enclosed lingerie, maybe a size too small. We've got like 2 or 3 groin injuries going around at the moment. Xhaka's hip.
I feel like the extra support down there can be helpful. I think,
Do you?
Yeah,
you don't think they're going a little tight?
No, you're supposed to wear those compression things and all that, right? So maybe a little compression is what's missing. Maybe they need something a little strappier, a little more risque. We can analyze that.
Xhaka's had groin and hip. Torreira's got a groin. Somebody else had a groin thing.
We all have a groin thing, too, as it turns out. Paul, let me ask you this. So, Lacazette goal. Fantastic free kick. But any goalkeeper issue there, or it's purely Lacazette's brilliance?
So I think the issue here is when I look at that shot, I'm like, hang on, why did it go there? He looks like he's wrapping his foot right around it, and he just does a little bit. I mean, the whip's there, but he hits maybe the ball kind of centrally, and it gets this bubble curve. Now, I think if they're watching that on video, the next goalkeeper is going to kind of know what that ball is going to do. But that ball didn't do what anybody else's shot does when you whip it around like that. I was sure. I watched it like 5, 6, 7 times, just like everybody did, thinking, no, that's going to the other side. So it just has a delicious pop and bubble curve right out, swings back in. I mean, the keeper moved for a reason. The whole action, because they haven't really seen a Lacazette free kick like that before, looked like he was putting it the other side. But it's a very dangerous free kick if he can do that on a regular basis, because actually you couldn't tell which way it was going. He could have easily whipped it to the other post with the same action, the same movement. The interesting thing was they were showing the two players lining up. It was Xhaka and Lacazette, and I'm thinking this will be a Xhaka shot. And you're looking at the two faces, and Laka's face was so relaxed, I'm thinking, well, he's not taking it. But he was deadly calm, and then he said about the players supporting him, he'd been doing this in practice, and the players all had belief in him. So this was very much on the cards. He's obviously been bubbling those in practice too, so maybe this is the first of many.
Yeah, I thought it was brilliant. Clive, you have to out yourself, though. You admitted it on Twitter as he was lining up for it. You're like, "Oh, don't shoot from there." Do you want to defend yourself now?
Well, I looked at him. What are we doing? Because I have this issue with the team. I think we're really a little bit wasteful in the last third. We could be so much more technically sound. I think we've added a level of directness and intensity and choreograph attacking, but mate, the technical levels dropped. I'm thinking, decision making last third. Here comes another one now. Lacazette's taking it. Why isn't it Xhaka? I just was about to type it out and explode it.
Clive gets a lot of stuff wrong, doesn't he?
Yeah, I always admit when I get things wrong.
You're familiar with the expression about glass houses, right, Paul? Tell me again how Dennis Suarez is exactly what the squad's missing.
His time is coming. If he isn't bloody injured,
it's not coming. He's going.
He's
going back to Barca. Anyway, go ahead, Clive.
No, I think it's good to admit when things are wrong. Like when you get things right, just brush it off. Right, pretend you didn't really mean it. You've got to be humble when this game, because there's another game around the corner that's going to make you look stupid. One thing I was a little bit right on, I'm afraid, is Ramsey's injury record. It's something that is a major issue and has been for many, many years. And it's always that left leg, right? It's always that left leg. And it's a problem. And I think it's been a major part of why maybe some people in the club weren't prepared to invest in him. And it's just a shame, because he's up and down, and I think he's really improved this year. And I'm not just saying that because he's going, I'm saying that because tactically, I think he's better. I think the manager's better for him. And I think people are appreciating him slightly differently, and me included, because of what he's bringing intention-wise to the team. If you look at his actual game, he's fairly loose still. He's still technically not sound, but you can't question his intent, and I love players like that really want to do things for the club, for the team. In particular, when Xhaka was out injured recently, I thought he said, "I'm having this. I'll take care of you in here," and that's just what you want. And now I'm looking at Mkhitaryan now on Ozil and say, "Okay, there's a role here for you. What are you going to do? Are you going to take it, or are you just going to jog about in that number 10 in a little armchair and make sure you don't do anything silly?" Get hold of that position like Ramsey was trying to. You've got as much ability. You're quicker. You can dribble. You can carry the ball. Mkhitaryan, Ozil, we all know what you can do. He's there for you now to carry the team in the next 5 or 6 games. And if they don't, I'll tell you what, people are going to look back and say the moment when Ramsey got injured was the moment we blew it. And that should not be happening with the amount of talent we have in our club. So it'll be one to watch. Yeah,
I agree with that. I mean, I think the one thing that we can both agree with, Clive, is that, like, even if you think Ramsey's level has risen to the point where he'd be worth a mega wage, you can't give a mega wage to a player you don't trust to stay on the pitch. And so while we will all be sad to see Ramsey go, and of course we should have gotten a fee for him, these injury concerns are sort of part of why it would have been very risky to commit to him. Paul, quick add on that before I get Clive to answer something else that I'm desperate to hear about.
Sorry to derail the Lacazette free kick conversation with that little curveball, but I actually think the answer to the Ramsey thing is it's a combo thing, right? It's Ozil and Mkhitaryan, or Mkhitaryan and Ozil, because you just don't see Ozil playing not only every game, but every 90. And you need that. It seems at the moment you need that. You can call it a threat, but the tag team of, depending on the circumstance, being able to pull in Mkhitaryan. And Mkhitaryan's more Ramsey-like. I mean, they're pretty different, but they bring the same kind of energy and intensity.
They can both cover the whole pitch. Forward. That's for sure.
Yeah. And speeding the play, etc. And I think Mkhitaryan just needs a couple more games to get back in the swing of it. But I mean, he should be the business for us.
He's been terrible the last couple of games. Something has really gone off the boil for him. I don't know what changed, because he was playing really well. But I take your point, and
a couple of games.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on. Clive, one thing though that you called yourself out, or I called you out, and then you repeated it for nearly getting it wrong about Lacazette taking that shot. Well, I can call myself out. I have an ability to tweet something and make the opposite thing happen. It is a power that I try to use sparingly, but it is an extraordinary power that I have. And I had tweeted out just before the Lacazette free kick that our strikers were having another stinker, that they were having a shit off. And to be fair, one free kick does not change the pattern of play. I thought both strikers, again, were poor. And I think that they have been poor for several games in a row now, despite Aubameyang getting a goal against Watford, despite Lacazette hitting the beautiful free kick. And you can say, well, look, if strikers are scoring, that's really all that matters. And I think there is truth to that. But Aubameyang missed another sitter. There were some bad touches. These two, maybe more than anyone else, are supposed to be the strength of our team, the thing that sets us apart. Maybe you can say, well, they are. Look, even when they play poorly, they get goals. But do you have a concern with the way they're playing, and do you agree that they struggled again in this game?
They've struggled at times, but I think we're getting away with it. And we're winning games with them not being on top of their game. We're seeing them in spurts. We're seeing them do quite important things. But they haven't had those stellar games like the Spurs at home games, for example. They haven't had that, but we're winning. And that form will return. And I just feel that Arsenal as a team are better when those two play. And it's not always what they do, it's what they do to others. Everyone's watching them. Everyone's stepping away. It was very interesting, the Everton game, when only one of them played. And I felt that we got pressed back into our half and we were under a lot of problems. So I think play them, support them with a number 10-like player that works two ways. Support them in wing-backs. If we go a back four, support them properly again with a player behind and have like a diamond in behind them. I just think other teams on their scouting sheets are going to I hope both of them don't play. And because they just work so well together, they work so hard, they press back in, they work the sides, they split fullbacks and centre halves. And I know we're looking at the outputs, and I look at some of the chances that Aubameyang misses and think, come on, man. He's unlucky with the one that the keeper made an unbelievable save for in this game. He gets that goal. They both jog off with a goal each, and they do the after-match interview, right? So it's close, but they're there. They're there to miss them, Elliot, if that makes sense. They're there. The dynamic of what they're doing is good, and most importantly, they're available. Right now, I don't want to mention it, right? But right now, we can't afford to lose one of those, right? With a Ramsey type injury, we just can't afford to do it. We need to have them available on the pitch because it's just critical to those away games to have that threat from those two. And I think that's the most important thing at the moment.
Yeah, and
if Suarez does have an injury, that's a bummer because actually,
no, it's
well, hang on, this. If he was ever going to have an opportunity, it's now. If he's any good, it's now. So if he's injured, well, that's just shitty all round. Because if Mkhitaryan's going to play a significant role in the number 10 spot tag teaming with Ozil, like Suarez or not, this would have been his opportunity. So I hope he's fit.
I guess, like, my question is, though, like, all right, look, I get you. He may have had a chance to play, but, like, we're projecting that he would have been worth a damn if he did. I mean, the reports of him behind... But
you're projecting he wouldn't be.
He hasn't been a good player in years anyway.
Okay, but we signed him, and when he
all
came in...
the reports about him behind the scenes are bad. All the reports.
Yeah, but he has not had a chance to play. Now,
I get it.
Maybe
he's
you're
had
right.
one
maybe
decent cameo against United. Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I heard he's got a groin strain, actually, another groin strain.
Yeah, another groin strain. Again, and closed lingerie.
The issue for Suarez was Emery didn't know what he'd have in the second half of the season. He didn't know he was going to have Ramsey. He didn't know he was going to have Ozil contributing. He didn't know that Mkhitaryan was out injured. And as soon as we signed Suarez, we effectively get all three back, and he hasn't had a look in. I'm not defending Suarez as a player, just as a signing for that position. Now's his bloody time. Ramsey's out. Ozil needs competition. Mkhitaryan will be playing. Yeah,
Xhaka and Torreira might be out for Crystal Palace. I think his
that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying he's any good.
I think his time was the beginning of January when Mkhitaryan was out, and that was the time when we were looking at him with big eyes, thinking, "Come on, we need you right now." By the time he got in and got up to speed, Mkhitaryan was back playing well, and Ramsey decided that, well, whether the club or Ramsey decided to stay. And suddenly we've got all these players that can play in his position, and he's down there trying to leap over the hierarchy of the dressing room, and it just hasn't quite happened for him. The time was probably the start of January. He would have had 4 weeks if he was fit, and he would have had a moment. And he's shown something, but none of us can judge him because just not enough time. And he's a type that we could do with. He accelerates a game. He's quick. He's sharp. He's brave in the dribble. We just haven't seen enough to really judge him, and it's a shame, really.
Let's see if Tim's still there. Tim, you still there?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
good.
Of course.
Great, good. Welcome back. So, putting Denis Suarez aside, because he is totally ancillary to any conversation here, and I am not criticizing the move to get him. I can see the wisdom of it. I think at this point, any analysis of him as a player is probably pointless. He's not going to play the rest of the season, and he is not going to stay at Arsenal this summer. So it's superfluous at this point. We can go back and analyze why we signed him. I think it's perfectly fine.
But if he's fit, he could play for the rest of the season.
I'll put it this way. Maybe he could have. I don't think we will see him in an Arsenal shirt again. Anyway, but let's talk about people who are in an Arsenal shirt and have been for a long time. Tim, one of the biggest surprises to me this season, one of the things I have been most wrong about, unlike Denis Suarez, where I'm very, very right about it, is Laurent Koscielny. I did not believe he would play this season, let alone play a lot, and let alone play a lot well. An overage player suffering an Achilles tear. We've seen in other sports and in this sport, players' careers end from this. He came back early, he's played a lot, and he has gotten back to the level that is, I think, at least comparable to some of the best football we've seen him play. I thought he was great in Naples. I'm curious to get your opinion of his performance and just the overall shock at what he is accomplishing by even being on the pitch and playing this well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. I think it's probably the story of the season for Arsenal and maybe even in the Premier League. To be honest with you, it's absolutely remarkable. And it's a physical feat. It's a psychological feat from him and from the people that worked with him on his injury. You know, we turned over a lot of staff to hire some guys on the performance side, and it looks like they did a bang-up job there. But I think also it's a tactical feat because he's changed his game. If you'd have told... So I always thought that Koscielny wouldn't age well, and I thought Mertesacker would. And actually, it's kind of gone the other way around because I thought, well, Mertesacker didn't have any pace to start with. He's always been the first yards in the head kind of defender. Obviously, he got an injury, but he quickly felt he couldn't play at a level anymore. Whereas the Koscielny of a few years ago, maybe even like 2-3 years ago, was very much like a bombastic defender, the guy who sprints to fires, and he's really changed his game, and he's become that kind of... I mean, if you watch him in the stadium, he doesn't... and whether this is a concern or not, he doesn't run properly at all. He kind of trots now. He doesn't really break into into sprints. Certainly not over long distances does he break into sprints. He kind of trots.
Reminds me of my dog at this point.
Yeah. And you know what? Maybe playing and like managing that Achilles injury for quite a while before it went, maybe that prepared him for this because he was trying to lighten the load. But he's become that kind of, right, I don't have the legs, so I'm going to arrange the legs around me. And when you watch him in the stadium, he's just calmly moving the pieces side to side. He's talking and he's just, go over there. It reminds me a bit of like at Highbury, I used to sit in the clock end behind one of the goals, and I just used to watch Tony Adams. And honestly, this is going to sound like one of those stupid, nostalgic, sepia-toned, this didn't really happen and I'm exaggerating. But honestly, I used to watch him point somewhere, and like 10 seconds later, the ball would be there. Like he saw pictures defensively. And Koscielny's doing something very similar at the moment. I'm just watching him kind of point to Monreal and just go out there a little bit. And sure enough, 5 seconds later, that's where the ball is. And he's really, really become a really commanding presence like that. And I think it's made him a better defender. I think he's better. And maybe that's because of, he doesn't, this Achilles thing, he'd been carrying it for a couple of years and now he's not carrying it anymore.
Do you think also though that the fact that he now has a much speedier, aggressive partner in Socrates and he can be more of the Mertesacker instead of having to be the Socrates to Mertesacker?
Yeah, 100%. I wrote about this when I wrote about Koscielny a little while ago, and I looked at some of the numbers, and Koscielny, far fewer duels, fewer aerial challenges that he's going into, fewer sprints, fewer recoveries, and Socrates is taking some of that work for him because Socrates just loves doing that, and he's quite good at it. And it's exactly, it reminds me of the Koscielny-Mertesacker partnership of a few years ago, but Koscielny has become the Mertesacker, and honestly, I think he's our most important player. I just don't think we're the same, and not. And also, let's face it, he's our best defender by quite a distance. And I like Socrates, and I think he's good, and I'm happy with the pair of them. But I think Koscielny, look, ultimately, what happens when you don't play Koscielny is
you play Mustafi. I mean, it's the distance between the two. Yeah,
exactly, and that's maybe that's a long term. Well, it's certainly going to be a fairly immediate issue for us, and maybe we've got to suck this season up and just enjoy it because we can't take for granted he's going to be able to do this again next season because at some point that injury is going to catch up with him. And if it doesn't, age will catch up with him anyway. And he's going to be 34 in September. So I'd love to squeeze another season out of him, but ideally I'd like that to be in a kind of phasing out role, in a kind of, we'll bring you in for the big games when we're playing three at the back. And we've got two, we've got like Torreira and Xhaka or Guendouzi ahead of you doing all your running, but we're not going to play you every week. We're in a position where we've got to buy a centre back really before we can do that. But my position on that at the moment is I'm trying not to worry too much about that. I'm just trying to enjoy this fabulous player who's been with us for such a long time and who frankly, I thought his career ended his Arsenal career anyway. I thought it ended that night in Madrid, and I was terribly sad about that because I've come to, we have like the legend conversation a lot at the moment, don't we? And we have it about players like Ramsey, and if there's someone, and to all intents and purposes, I kind of think it's a bit of a pointless if entertaining conversation, but. Laurent Koscielny is whether he's a legend or not, he's the closest. In the current squad, and I've hugely enjoyed watching him come back like this. And there's even a little part of me, as much as I think it would be bad, that would just like to see him go this summer and just finish like this, because I think he deserves that.
Well, if we lift the cup in Baku, wouldn't that be a great sending off for him? I mean, and sort of the perfect coda to the time he's been at Arsenal, right? Lifting not the cup we want, but the cup we're good enough to win. I think there'd be sort of a poetry to that because his time at Arsenal has been the era, the epoch right after when we were one of the best in Europe, and so it'd be an interesting...
And how difficult has it been in his 9 years at Arsenal to be a defender and look good, because I can't think. I can only think of Bakary Sagna maybe as a pure defender who's done that in the same time that Koscielny's been here.
Certainly for any extended period. I mean, Mertesacker had a season or two where he looked really good, but yeah, I take your point, and I think part of the reason he looked good is he had an athletic Koscielny next to him who could bail him out while he just sort of stood there at the top of the box. But I think it also was a reminder of how difficult it is to rebuild a central defense, because I think you got to have a 30-year-old center back. You know what I mean? I think no matter how athletic and physically gifted a young player can be, I think what we're seeing from Koscielny is you really only develop the vision and the awareness and the experience and the sort of premonitions to play center back later in your career. Now, that doesn't go for all central defenders. There are good young center backs, but I think you do want that balance. Where most teams rebuild around youth, I don't know if you can rebuild a central defense around youth. So we'll see what happens there. I think we should turn our attention to the games coming up now. And Paul, just really quickly, I think we got a break, you could argue, with how the Chelsea side of the tournament turned out. I actually think that Frankfurt are a really good team. And I think that because they can score goals and Chelsea struggle to score goals, I think it could be a really, really stern test for them. Now, the downside to that is I don't love our chances against Frankfurt if we were to play them in the final. I think that they will be a really tough opponent, but I could see them knocking out Chelsea more than I could have seen that from Benfica. On our side, we get the tougher team, but we knew that was kind of coming in Valencia. Still, we will be favorites, and it's a tie we can win. It brings back your favorite Arsenal player, Francis Coquelin. How much are you looking forward to his return to the Emirates?
So the first game's at the Emirates, but isn't he suspended?
It wouldn't surprise me.
Because I think he got an extra yellow card in this
shot.
game. That was the chatter I saw on Twitter. Is that
Yep.
right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Well, that's a shame. Single tear rolls down my face. But I mean, how worried are you about Valencia
in the away
in general?
leg? in the away leg we'll play. I actually think it could be quite interesting seeing Torreira against Coquelin and see them doing their thing. That'll be a little sideshow. And we'll hopefully get to see Gabriel in both legs. Both players I liked a lot. And I personally was sorry to see go, but there you go. It was definitely time to move on and up from Coquelin. I get that bit of it. So I think, it's going to be an interesting matchup. They're a very good team. For what I've thought about Emery as the Europa League specialist is, like when he gets Crystal Palace to come into our ground, or we go away to Everton, or we go away to Watford, he's still getting used to just how fucking intense those games are. How teams that we should be able to swat and twat away are going to give you a hell of a game. And he just, I think he's done incredibly well. He's now got 32 wins out of his first 50 games, which is better than any Arsenal manager ever. And I'm not up in...
That's why I was so excited about his appointment when they announced it.
Yeah, I'm not up in Emery. I don't think he's been brilliant or wonderful or perfect by any means, but it's kind of takes you back a bit to realize nobody else, not Graham, not Wenger, not nobody has done that in the first 50 games. So he's doing pretty good, but the Premier League's got to be quite the eye-opener for him in terms of just what he's going to get from particular teams home and away. And he must look at the Europa League and think, I know, I got the feel for this. I know what Napoli away is going to be. I know what he's going to really know what Valencia away is and Valencia at home is. So overall, that's my overriding security in this. Not that just that he's a Europa League specialist, as some describe him, but he knows these teams. He knows these grounds. He knows the rhythm of the games. And, it's less Valencia and the fact that Emery knows every fucking thing about them and has done for forever. So that's my guiding, calming feeling. I think Valencia is a really good matchup for us in that sense, even if they're a good team. Emery is just going to have a good feel for what he needs, how he needs to play it, how aggressive we need, how much we need to go at them and when. He's played Napoli really well. I do think there's a bit of narrative there with Napoli. They could have been a lot better with a little bit of better finishing. And had we not got this goal against them with the free kick early in the tie, this could have been quite a different and livelier affair. But you just feel that Emery's at home at these grounds against these teams. So
yeah, look, the conventional wisdom is that you want to play at home in the second leg, right? I've never really understood that, but that was the conventional wisdom. I totally disagree with that for this Arsenal team, and I think playing the home leg first is a huge advantage for us. And I thought you saw it in this tie because, look, our away form is a thing. Whatever reason we think it is, whether I think it's selection or tactics or psychology, it's a thing. And this game was less stressful and, let's say it, easy to some extent because we went into this away game with a 2-goal lead and feeling that we had a position of confidence. I think playing at home is a huge advantage for us to do it first because I think we're very, very good at home. I think we will win the home leg, and then we go away feeling like we're favorites, feeling good about our chances, as opposed to going away first, making a pig's ear of it, as they say, and then having to rescue it in a second leg. So I think this is an advantage. Now, look, we had the same situation against Atleti last year and dominated them in the first leg, gave up the Griezmann goal and went out, as everybody knows. Hopefully it won't be the same. Clive, as we finish up here, the question then turns to how Emery manages this. We're going to be playing every 3 or 4 days for the rest of the season. It is an impossible fixture congestion that we face now through the end of the season, and we do it potentially without Ramsey for any of it, with Xhaka nursing an injury, with Torreira nursing an injury, with Denis Suarez sadly nursing an injury, with Koscielny nursing being old, and really having to look at this and say, and let's face it, I mean, Nacho Monreal and even Socrates are not spring chickens. So he's going to have to figure out how to get the balance right. And I'm curious for you now, with a trophy within sight, with, a realistic path to winning the Europa League, albeit potentially having to face Chelsea in the final, and probably being just barely favorites to finish top 4, which do you think he needs to prioritize? And how do you think he gets the balance right in terms of rotation?
You've got a question to answer. I do think, I'm going to say it now, I do think he's had the Europa League in his mind. And the difference in focus for the Everton game and the Napoli games around it, the players were on it for those games. They really were. So that tells you there's an internal focus within the club that we're going for that. I think they know what they need to do within the league. I think they're focused on certain games, obviously their home games. I think obviously the Wolves games and Leicester games are staring at us, right? So if we can get 4 points from those games, I think Burnley, if we have to get something on the last day, we will do so. And make sure we take care of business in the home games. I think it's there for us. I don't see a need to prioritise any particular competition. I think the most important thing is we've had 2 away wins on the trot. And I'm starting to see a better confidence away, even though I didn't like the performance of the Watford game. The results are giving us the confidence. That's 2 on the trot. We stopped conceding, silly goals really, apart from the Everton one. And so we're improving slightly. So do we get excited? Not yet, because as we saw with Ramsey going down, things can change very, very quickly, right? So I think he does a great job of rotation. I mean, I'm ready for this.
He didn't early in the year. I think he's improved dramatically in that. He used a lot of first-team players for things like the League Cup and the Europa League group stage, and we were talking about that a lot in October, November.
And I agreed with him. And I know you didn't, but I did, because he was trying to create an all-for-one attitude, and so he couldn't leave people at home like Wenger did and split them into 2 squads. He wanted to set the rules down, and he was getting to know his players. You can't get to know them when half of them are at home watching EastEnders, right? So I think I agreed with it. I know it didn't always work for you when it came to rotation, but that was the period he went for the 22-game unbeaten run. So I think he does a good job. Doesn't get it right every single time, obviously, and sometimes he is projecting forward for the next few games, and we try to understand what he's trying to do. But I was ready for this manager. For my own personal way I look at football, I'm ready for someone who looks at a game and then approaches a game tactically and changes for that game. I think, I can see what he's trying to do. The odd occasion I get flummoxed and think, why have you done that? But crikey, the amount of changes he introduces every single game, even within games, it's so hard to get every single one right? But I much prefer somebody that's looking at it, trying to problem solve, because for me, football is about problem solving, having players that can do that for you while the game is going on. I think it's a massive. If you're looking at the future of this team, there's two things we need to buy for: problem solvers and building trust. We have too many players that give us 2 out of 10 or 9 out of 10. And we need to be able to fix problems without always inviting to the bench. If you're looking for next year's signings, look for that criteria in the players: tactically flexible problem solvers, more consistent performers that are competitive. And I promise you, that's where we're going to end up next year. And we will do that. I'm going to say now, as the Europa League winners, I'm convinced he's going to win that tournament. I think he's going to blow past Valencia. I don't care what Chelsea got in the final; they're getting done as well, right? And if I do agree with you about Eintracht Frankfurt, I think they're a very good team, lots of bright young players, but I don't see Chelsea falling at the semi-final to them. So it will be Arsenal Chelsea in the final, and we will take them, no problem.
Yeah, well, I wish I shared your confidence. I mean, I feel pretty good about it, actually. I just think it's going to come down to, honestly, how fit and healthy we are. I mean, Chelsea have one less game than we do in the league to play. So that will help them, certainly. Tim, last question here for you. First of all, just between the two, just sort of quick, like off the top of your head answer, which is the priority right now?
I honestly think neither. I think...
so we should lose both, you're saying?
Yeah.
The top four and your...
I honestly think we're just at a stage where we just have to take each game as it comes and go for every game. I've never believed you have to make a decision really, unless circumstances absolutely warrant it, and I don't think they do. I think we can. It's a few games left now. I don't think we have to make any big decisions there. I like the line that's been coming out the last few weeks that we've got 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever cup finals, and I think that's the only way to treat it. I think if you start choosing at this stage, you get yourself into trouble.
Okay.
Detrimental to both, basically, both
exactly.
competitions.
Yep.
Yeah, you can wind up, as kind of shitting the bed in both because you were trying to split the baby, right? I mean, you put out a medium team in the league and lose, then you put out a medium team against Valencia and lose. I take your point, but I mean, I think even you would agree, Tim, although whenever I'm about to say something, I shouldn't presume that anyone will agree, that like there's no way Koscielny plays every one of the games we have remaining. Like that's not physically possible. Probably same is true for Nacho Monreal. Probably same is true for some of the midfielders who are carrying knocks, especially now with Ramsey out of the rotation. I mean, I don't even know that you want to play Lacazette and Aubameyang in every single one of the games. So given that, while I agree with everything you previously said, choices still have to be made.
Yeah.
How would you make them by, maybe playing a back 4 and 3 up top so that, in the league so that you can
maybe
more equitably split the way the talent is distributed across the pitch? What's the right way for him to sort of do what you suggested, which is take every game as a cup final while being realistic about the fact that there are just players that can't play every single game?
Yeah, I mean, in that case, the Premier League gives you more, just because there are more games, it gives you more kind of room for that bit of rotation. So I think ideally Koscielny would play both legs of the Valencia semi-final, and then if we get to the final, he'll play that as well, for example. Whereas there's just a bit more latitude in the Premier League games, and we've got the brilliant Mustafi to come in for him if he can't play. So if choices are going to be made at this stage, they're probably going to be made in some Premier League games. And I'm wary of taking Crystal Palace too lightly on Sunday. I think they're a very good team with some, particularly away from home. They hit you on the counter, and they got some players that can really hurt you. And I sense the fans have very much fallen into this, we're at home so we win, so that's the end of it. But I don't think it will be quite that straightforward. But that's kind of irrelevant. As long as the players haven't fallen into that frame of mind, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, it's certainly on Sunday against Palace, we're going to have to make some choices. I think we're going to have to take like Koscielny out of the and there is a danger because we've lost Ramsey of kind of over-egging the pudding a bit. So that's no Koscielny, that's no Ramsey. Xhaka's a doubt, Torreira's a doubt. But
Socrates is out.
He's banned. Yep,
suspended.
Good point.
But where we've got the players and the room for rotation is in the forward position. So we can rotate Lacazette and Aubameyang. We can rotate Iwobi and Mkhitaryan, and if he gets fit again, Denis Suarez. Like there's a bit more latitude up there, and you could make the argument that defensively, defenders don't need quite as much R&R as midfielders and forwards. Koscielny is probably an exception there. And, you can rotate left back between Monreal and Kolasinac if you want to do a back four. So, honestly, the answer is just to take it game from game, see what players look like in training, see what you can get away with. And if we rest a couple of players on Sunday, I don't think that's us taking Palace lightly. It's just we've got to do it at some point, and we're pretty strong at home, so it kind of makes sense to do it in the home game. Some tough choices are going to have to be made, but I think Emery's been rotating the team all season anyway, so hopefully that won't be too much of kind of a culture shock for the players. And for us, I sense this sense of going mental every time the starting lineup is announced has kind of died down a little bit. Whether that's just because results have been better or we've gotten used to the manager doing it, I'm not sure. So hopefully it won't create too much of a frisson. But I guess to answer your question, I think now just because there are 2, possibly 3 games left, he'll go as strong as he can for the Europa League games because they're knockouts.
Yeah, well, I think in that case, right, the punishment is more severe in the sense that, like, especially the home leg, right? Like, if you fall behind to Crystal Palace because you picked the wrong team, and you're 1-0 down after 30 minutes, you can change it up and recover and even come back and win the game. You're 1-0 down against Valencia. Even if you come back and win the game, you've given up the whole, the away goal and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I think at a minimum, you've got to be full strength for that Valencia home leg. If you get a 3-0 somehow, what you've done is you've given yourself a rotation opportunity in the return leg. There's another advantage there. Look, I think this Sunday has the potential to be the banana skin because we have all sort of agreed that to make top 4, we have to win our home games. And doing it without Ramsey, without Socrates, potentially rotating Koscielny out, maybe without Torreira, maybe without Xhaka, like none of that is ideal. We could surely use Mkhitaryan to come back into form right now and an Ozil masterclass at home to get through it, and hopefully that's what we'll get. But let's leave it there. Tim's on Twitter. Roberto, thanks, Tim.
My pleasure as always.
Paul's on Twitter at Paz in my pants. Thanks, Paz.
Woohoo!
Clive's on Twitter at ClivePAFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
My name's Elliot Smith, Blockman Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Give us a 5-star review. Vote for us in the FBAs. You can just go to arsenalvisionpodcast.com/FBAs and one-click vote. There's 2 days left. And losing this to Sunderland, I mean, what would be more Arsenal than something like that? But let's not let that happen. I think we have a mailbag podcast scheduled for Patreon next week. I know that we will have a post-Crystal Palace podcast as we are committed to doing a podcast after every single Arsenal match, no matter how exciting or not exciting they turn out to be. So we love you. We appreciate you for listening to us. And as always, we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Palace 0.